Series 1, Matter of Life and Death. This is the 5th lecture in Lecture Series 1. And we're talking about opportunity lost due to lack of critical thinking. Just to recap, you have already watched the lecture by Dr. Bruce Grayson on consciousness independent of the brain. And after that, I've recommended that you watch a debate on Intelligence Square, New York. The motion is death is not final. And today, we're going to review the lessons learned from that debate. Okay? And the lessons learned has to do with critical thinking, arguments, and logical fallacies. Just to recap a little bit about that debate, was an exciting one in New York City, Intelligence Square, which is Dr. Raymond Moody, the founder of the Near-Death Experience Studies, and his partner is Dr. Alexander from Harvard, against Caltech and Yale. I hope you enjoyed that debate as much as I did. And to get the most out of that debate, I ask you to contemplate on 2 learning objectives. Number 1, how come the losing side lost? And number 2, who committed the logical fallacies of moving the goalpost? But the entire audience bought this powerful fallacy. Now, regarding the first learning objective, how come the losing side lost? The purpose of this review is not to criticize our esteemed scholars for trying their best in this debate, but rather we want to reflect and strategize how to move forward. We want to know our strengths and weaknesses and how to remedy those deficiencies which are lacking in the public consciousness. That is the motivation of today's talk. Now, how badly did we lose? You can see before the debate, it's pretty much 1/3 for the motion, 1/3 against the motion, and 1/3 is undecided. After the debate, there's a drop in for the motion, 5%, and the winner is 15%. It's very significant. And this change has mostly come from the undecided. That means the side against the motion has a very powerful rhetoric in convincing the undecided population that what is being reported by the for side are unscientific. Now that we need to define what science is. So thanks to all the students and those of you who submitted the answer to the first learning objective. And these are the 6 most important ones which I have selected for discussion today. The first one is, the audience seems to lack knowledge of critical thinking and falling for the rhetoric and logical fallacies. The second one is, the against side has good rhetorical argument skills. They're able to lump the near-death experience studies together with the not very well respected and really skeptical stories about UFO, Bigfoot, and psychic. So they're kind of mixing apples with oranges. In fact, this is kind of a red herring as well when you talk about something else deviated from the topic, which is red herring is another logical fallacy. Now, Dr. Alexander overemphasizes his personal account of the experience and failed to cite supporting evidence outside the NDE specialties. And all these other evidences I will be going over with you shortly. NDE can be easily discredited as possible artifact of oxygen-deprived mental garbage. Now, the rebuttal to that is called shared death experience. That means the bedside bystanders are perfectly healthy, physically and mentally, and yet they're able to share the same experience as the person going through that near-death experience. So that certainly the bystanders are not oxygen deprived, but that rebuttal was not forceful enough. The fifth point is when the debater uses too much philosophical language, it tends to lose the audience. Rather, they should be citing other systematic NDE studies worldwide and how scientific it is, using the Grayson scale, etc., to quantify these experiences scientifically. So stick with the scientific language, not so much philosophical language. Finally, the audience lack a clear definitions of science and can be easily fooled by what they perceive as scientific arguments. I'm going to remedy that by giving a clear definition of science in the next lecture. So first, let us examine the first point about critical thinking and logical fallacies. I ask in the second learning objective, who committed moving the goalpost fallacy, but the entire audience bought it? Dr. Carroll from Caltech says, well, if there's a ghost in the room that could lift that glass of water in front of him right now, then I would be convinced. And then he added, for those who are listening on the radio, the glass is not moving. So the audience gave big laughter, but then they all applaud. That means they all bought the fallacy. Dr. Novella keeps saying that the NDE cases has no controlled scientific studies. And to paraphrase him, they say, why don't NDE people bring back the cure for Alzheimer's disease? Now these, moving a ghost moving a glass, or bring back cure for Alzheimer's disease, are really remote from the topic of debate at hand. And the audience lack clear definition of science and thus fall for this rhetoric. They think these are scientific statements. So what exactly is the logical fallacy of moving the goalpost? Well, it's an unfair way of changing the criterion or the goal during an argument or competition. While that is still in progress, suddenly you change the rule of the game. So while the opponent is about to score, you remove the goal so the opponent cannot score. Removing the goal means such as get me a ghost to move my glass of water, or come back with the cure of Alzheimer. That is moving the goal away, which so that is completely unattainable and unachievable for the opponent. So that is an unfair advantage, which is certainly a logical fallacy. Now, not only did the audience fall for this logical fallacy, but every one of us, in fact, walk around thinking we have pretty good mental faculties and we're thinking straight. Now, moving the goalpost is only one of the many, many common fallacies. And I invite you to visit this link to learn about the common logical fallacies that we carry around with us. We like to think we have a pretty straight head and we think clearly. But on top of the common logical fallacies, we could be walking around with over 170 connective biases. We just make up things that are not true. For example, one of the connective biases is called pareidolia, which means seeing human faces everywhere. So you can see all this looks like human faces. That's a beautiful one. So we just make up information in our head, which are illogical, but we are human and our head thinks like this. So I invited you to look up Wikipedia here that lists the common connective biases. This is to get us familiar with the fact that we might think we have a pretty good head and thinking straight, but human beings are inherently biased and gullible to logical fallacies. Okay, so I've been talking about logic, fallacies, and connective biases. And Dr. Moody's is very much aware of these deficiencies in the general population. In his opening remark, he says, I think we are on the brink of a breakthrough in rational study of an afterlife. But it is not going to come initially from science, but initially from realm of logic and critical thinking. So let us define what is logic and what is critical thinking. All right? So the definition of critical thinking, the one I like the most, is by Paul Stern, who says, it is a set of intellectual skills and psychological habits to solve problems, discover truth, and communicate clearly. Now, I think we could all use some critical thinking, if that is a definition. Who doesn't want to discover truth, communicate clearly, and have expanded intellectual skills? So therefore, I would highly recommend that you follow my YouTube link and have a look at the critical thinking. Now, if you would like to take an introductory course on critical thinking, I highly recommend Professor Kevin De La Plante at Critical Thinker Academy at this hyperlink. He described 5 essential components of critical thinking. They include logic, argument, rhetoric, background knowledge, attitude, and values. So you can see all these are very applicable to making up our mind on an important issue such as life after death debate. Okay, so point number 3, supporting evidence outside of NAE. I'm going to go through that very quickly at the end of this talk and in great detail in the following lecture. This point I've already covered. And the last one about philosophical language. Let us take a look at what Dr. Moody said. At 1 hour, 17 minutes, and 52 seconds into the debate, this is what Dr. Moody said when he quoted David Hume, who said some new species of logic is required for this purpose, and some new faculty of mind which may enable us to comprehend that logic. And here is the citation of David Hume's source. So let me just replay this little excerpt from what Dr. Moody said, and I want you to pay special attention when he makes those statements.
Comments, you said that you believe we're on the verge of understanding through philosophy and logic this other realm. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I think that probably when the conversation develops, well, what do you do? Oh, I write books, near-death experience and so on. About 1 out of 10 people say, oh, I don't believe in life after death. When you're dead, you're dead. Then I go on and I ask them, well, how did you reach that conclusion? Most of them say, what are you talking about in the first place? Life after death is just illogical. And you know, the sentence, there is life after death, is a self-contradiction if you look up the words in the dictionary. And this may sound trivial, but this is really a major problem, because it helps us understand why life after death is not yet a scientific question. The question is one of intelligibility. What does it mean? And the person, I think, who stated that point of view most eloquently was David Hume, who said, by the mere light of reason, it seems difficult to prove the immortality of the soul. Then he went on to say, some new species of logic is requisite for that purpose, and some new faculties of the mind that they may enable us to comprehend that logic. That sounds like a tall order, but it's not really that difficult. The trouble is that you have to stop thinking about stories for a while and beautiful narratives and really get busy with some conceptual thinking. But when that's all said and done, I think that we do now have new ways of thinking about things that are illogical that will open up entirely new ways to investigate the afterlife question. This is not geared to the afterlife per se. What somebody who wants to go through this pathway has to do first is to say, well, what I'm going to focus here is on learning new logical principles and going through a process of learning. Then, as a corollary, much later down the road, this has implications for the afterlife question.
So, you have heard Dr. Moody quoting the famous Scottish philosopher David Hume, who said some new species of logic is requisite, and some new faculty of mind that will enable us to comprehend all this life after death issue. Well, at the Academy of Wisdom and Enlightenment, we are providing answer to David Hume's sentiment. The new species of logic is called non-duality thinking, or a dualistic thinking mode. The new faculty of the mind is called how to open the mind to a continuum concept. And if you would take a look at the AW curriculum, you will see these upcoming lectures very soon. Today, let us continue focusing on human consciousness independent of the brain. I have counted there are 6 different lines of scientific evidence. And these 6 lines of evidence, I categorize them into 2 groups. The first are unequivocal interpretations. That means there's no argument about it. They include near-death experience, shared death experience, regressive hypnosis, and rebirth. And why are these unequivocal? I will go into great detail about them in the upcoming lecture. The other empirical observations are minimal brain, yet normal function. The last one is terminal lucidity, which is a phenomenon among those dying patients who are progressively deteriorating in their mental capacity, but just at the brief moment prior to death, all the mental functions return normally. You would expect the mental deterioration to continue until death, but that is just the opposite. So, thank you for tuning in, and my upcoming lecture, I'm going to go into definition of science and going through all those 6 lines of evidence. Thank you.